All right, I have a 96 Ford Econoline Club Wagon 7.3 liter E350. We were having issues with getting air to blow cold in the rear. After a little bit of internet searches, I found that the orifice tube could get clogged, and I haven't seen anything in regards to where this is or how to replace it. So I'm gonna post this video for others to see. This right here is where the orifice tube is located. Right now it's actually looking like it's apart, or I've already pulled it apart, but there's the part that's gonna come out from inside this tube, and that's the orifice tube. And so I will take it out and see what it looks like. But I've heard that they can clog and stop your AC from working. So one thing to note is that this is a pretty unique, at least I've never seen it. It's a spring locking mechanism, and this spring sits around this lip. And so to get these two pieces apart, you have to expand the ring to get it over the lip. And there is a special tool for it, but I didn't have it tonight, so I had to jimmy something up. And what I did is I took some metal strapping, and I took 2 wraps around it, and then secured it with a pipe clamp, and then put force on it this way, and it expanded that spring around that lip, and then I was able to just pull this out. So that is something that you don't usually see every day. And that looks pretty clogged. So I am hoping that this solves my problem. So another thing that this tells me is that, given all of the flakes of metal and everything, is that my compressor pump could be going bad. So that might need to be replaced in the future. So for now, I could tell that it's blowing cold out the front, but just not the rear. So I'm gonna replace the orifice tube and see if we can't get it working good again. All right, so the orifice tube did not fix the rear AC. So the next thing to try is the expansion valve here in the back. So it's tucked back behind this panel. So I gotta remove a seat, all of the panel, and pull the whole system. All right, remove 2 seats from the back right here. Then there's a seat belt here with a star bit that needs to be removed from right up here. And then it's gonna be removing these panels, and then there's a brake right there where all of this panel will come off, and then I'll be able to have access to that point. All right, so I got the top panel off. All of that just snaps off. This bottom panel has a bunch of screws at each point there, and I believe the lower end is snapped into place. All right, so the seat belts are still looped through the panel. I didn't want to bother taking off the bolts and stuff like that, so just was able to at least slide it all the way back. Now I have all access to the entire unit. And so, as I understand, the expansion valve is somewhere right inside here. So I've got to pull maybe the whole unit, but gonna find out. All right, so I started working through trying to see what it's gonna take to get this piece basically separated. There's a seam right down here where the whole half of this will separate out, but it's all tied in. And it appears that that little cylinder, let's see if we get a good image on it. That is the expansion valve. So again, which is right here. So nothing is really snap and bolt together. You actually have to separate these, and you're breaking apart a glue and a bunch of other things. So rather than tearing that whole thing apart, I'm tempted to just cut into this plastic with a hot knife. And if I could do it like you cut the top off of a pumpkin at a certain angle, my hope is that I could pull it off and then put it back on, and then I can do some plastic welding. Can't say that I've ever done plastic welding, but I'm gonna try, because it looks like either way I'm gonna be doing a lot of taping and gluing these pieces back together. So we're gonna give that a try. All right, I might have regrets later, but that worked out pretty smooth to use that hot knife. And there's the expansion valve that I need to replace. Here's the new one. Looks like it'll be a good fit. All right, so my good idea turned into a bad idea. Trying to remove these nuts here, they're completely seized. And so putting a little bit of torque on this wasn't much, just completely broke that pipe there. So I am probably gonna have to get an entire new condenser, because that pipe that comes out of the condenser comes up to there. So now I'm gonna have to try and figure out how I wanna remove the entire condenser itself. We shall see. Well, after considering and contemplating my life choices, I was starting to wonder if I was barking up the right tree with the expansion valve. I didn't see any clogs down low. Comparing the two, then I finally got the other little piece off of here, and it does actually look like we've got some cloggage right there compared to this new one here. So yeah, there's a bunch of junk inside there. So I think I'm starting to narrow it down, but still got to figure out how I'm going to get this condenser out and get that all replaced. Okay, so day 2 on working on this thing. We use this car daily, so I had to take both the seats out again and reinstall them, then took them back out. Let's see, it took me about 45 minutes to get to this part again where I had all the seats out and everything taken apart, but I got a new core. As it turns out, it came with some new gaskets. I got a whole kit just in case, because I needed to replace a lot more as I was going here on the front. All right, that wasn't too bad. After I lifted up the assembly, the bottom tray just kind of peeled right out. There's definitely a glue in there that kind of sealed it all together, but after I lifted it up, the evaporator just fell pretty much right out of there. Okay, since that last video, I was able to successfully spot weld a few spots, doing that plastic weld, and then the rest of it I just used duct tape. I know that sounds crazy, but I think it's actually gonna work. And I just sealed that thing all back together. I put everything back together, charged the system, and as soon as we fired up the AC unit, then the compressor failed. So of course I had to swap out, put in a new compressor. This one just fried and it's all seized up at this point. So I purchased a kit. I got a compressor and the accumulator. They were surprisingly not too hard to change out, but there's a few details with the oil that you gotta pay attention to when you fill the new compressor with oil. But also with that kit, I got an additional expansion valve, so after I charged it all back up with the new compressor, new accumulator, I still was not getting cold air in the rear. So I think once again, it's either the orifice tube or the expansion valve that got clogged up again, especially once this ran with it all seized up. I'm guessing there's probably some particulates that clogged it all back up. So I'm gonna take the time to show you in time lapse the removal of all the stuff that I have to get to get to this expansion valve again. But hopefully it'll come in handy that I just duct taped this little panel so I can get easy access to that expansion valve. So hopefully everything goes smoothly and I can find where it's clogged, fix the clog, and finally get some cool air. All right, so from that last video, you could see that, well, I guess it was in time lapse, which it took me about 15 minutes to get to this point. So unfortunately, I'm kind of getting good at that now. But here is the duct tape that I did around the edge. I'm gonna peel it all back and then cut through the plastic welds that I did and then get access to that expansion valve. All right, there it is, all taped back together. Now I'm gonna just put everything back together. All right, so it looks like this orifice tube is pretty clogged. The evaporator valve, you can still blow air through it, so I think that's still okay, but I'm gonna try and clean this out and see if I can get some air through it. The last thing that I'd like to mention is that my kids were complaining about it not being cool enough in the back, and so I ordered these vents, and probably one of the most simple modifications that I could do. You could see how the vent or the duct comes up the side and then down. These two vents weren't here, so I added those two vents, and it was pretty simple. As simple as just cutting out with a pocket knife into the duct and just pushing those vents up into there. So the kids in the very, very back can get some nice air now. All right, so there's a lot that happened from all of those clips, and that was over the span of probably a few weeks. And now I've been operating the AC unit for a couple months now, and it's all blowing cold. But I wanted to just do a quick summary of the symptoms, diagnosis, and kind of the lessons learned through all of this. So it all started out first with the AC not blowing cold in the rear of the vehicle. The front was blowing cold, so that was not a problem. It wasn't a blower. The blower's blowing fine, and it was blown out of the top vents, so there wasn't anything else going on there. We found that the orifice was clogged, and then we also found out that there's an expansion valve in the rear of the vehicle that was also clogged. So once I changed those out, I was able to recharge the system, and then still did not have cold air blowing out the back. So I think it got reclogged again. And again, I think the lesson learned there was that this compressor was going bad. So kind of, I think going forward, if that happens to me again, I'm gonna assume that if I have a clogged orifice, that I'm going to then replace the compressor as well, because I think that's what that is indicative of. Otherwise, there's no reason why it should be clogging. So this was pretty easy. It just had 4 bolts. It just sits right on the top of the motor, right back here. So once you have this stuff off, it's pretty simple to get to. And then just the hose that attaches to the back of the compressor here. But again, not too bad. With the kit, it came with the accumulator, so I'm guessing that it's just something you need to replace. So I did. That again was pretty simple, which that accumulator is just right back kind of behind these wires and behind the battery here. So once you remove that battery, again, it's pretty accessible, and there's oil that goes into the accumulator and then also the compressor when you're doing that. Now, in the sequence of events, I broke a pipe when I was removing the expansion valve that connects right back here on this pipe. That was probably a blessing in disguise, because as you could see, I probably have like, I don't know, 60% capacity here, and I can definitely tell a difference with the new evaporator. In the back, we get so much more airflow, so that was pretty bad, and you just couldn't see that otherwise when you opened up that compartment. So anyways, I think that summarizes everything for this video.